Thank you so much, Audrey. Thank you everyone for joining us. I appreciate you all being here. Before we get started, let me thank both Jasmine and Audrey, as well as Loretta Simon, for their hard work and dedication to help us present this program to you. So as we look at the new economy, let me tell you what we're going to discuss this morning. Then at the very end, we will have a question and answer and a discussion, and I'll tell you some other things that I want you to be aware of. We're going to have an overview of the Zan Wesley Holmes Jr. Community Outreach Center. I'm going to present to you my information, presentation objectives, and then we'll have the presentation. So the mission of the Zan Wesley Holmes Jr. Community Outreach Center is creating self-sustaining pathways out of poverty for young people and families living in Dallas through education, training, and job placement. We have a partnership with the Dallas Independent School District, and that partnership program is called FRAZIER House, where we provide free social service wraparound model services to anyone within the Dallas Independent School District boundaries. FRAZIER House opened in June 2018. We're located on 4600 Spring Avenue in the Fair Park area or the Mill City subdivision. FRAZIER House also had approximately 8,000 people to receive services in 2019. And from March 2019 to March 2020, FRAZIER House was responsible for creating 5,327 jobs. Our signature program as an organization now is the Juneteenth Economic Forum, the Lunch and Learn series, our low voltage training program, and our cash flow, collateral, and leverage classes. FRAZIER House partners Oasis Center with the Work Ready Boot Camp, Senior Source with utility assistance and financial education for seniors, the UNT Law Clinic, which is expungement eligibility and other legal services, Inspiring Leaders of Tomorrow. They provide training for insurance classes. FRAZIER House has collaborators, Amazon, the State Fair of Texas, the U.S. Census Bureau, and Vita Tech Center. I'm your host for today's presentation on the new economy. As both Jasmine as well as Audrey said, I'm the executive director, but my credentials for this talk or presentation comes from me being a former registered investment advisor for Nationwide Retirement Solutions. I'm also an adjunct mathematics professor and a small business owner. So the presentation objectives, we're going to look at the economic system, number one. Number two, we're going to look at the new economy. Number three, we're going to look at the influencers on the economy, then the stages of the economy, business stages, and then I'm going to give you some action items so that you can take things away and begin to either implement them within your own business, both nonprofit or for-profit, or you implement them within your family. So one, we're going to look at the economic system. Two, we'll look at the new economy. Three, we're going to look at those things that influence the economy. Then we're going to review stages of the economy, business stages, and action items. So let's look at the economic system components. As you see on the screen, our economic system has 1, institutions, 2, ideology, 3, industrialization, and 4, integration. So those are the major components within really any macroeconomic system. The US, the UK, China, These are the drivers within that system.
American Baggage Service, Sheila speaking.
Okay. So let's go over it again. The economic components.
On my desk, and last night I was.
The economic components are the institutions, the ideology, industrialization, and integration. So those are the major components. And what happens a lot of times is people don't understand the drivers of the system.
Institution.
And because they don't understand the drivers of these systems, but it's outside the circle, politics, history, culture, and technology, they drive those four components. So the components, again, institutions, ideology, industrialization, and integration. But the drivers are politics, history, culture, and technology. And what you need to understand and bring from this today is, what are the cycles that drive politics? What are the cycles that drive our history? What are the cycles that drive our culture, as well as technology? So cycles are a big, big part of how this whole economy, it moves and does what we call ebbs and flows. So the new economy is called an innovation and technology. So we're in what we call innovation and technology. And when we had COVID-19 to hit our shores, it did a fast forward. So our economy is really speeding up as a result of the shutdown of COVID. And so I'm going to define for you today both the meaning of innovation and technological, okay? So innovation is the process of creating new technologies and using them in the economy. So here's some new technologies that we're using currently. One, we're using Siri. Two, we're using driverless trucks in the economy. Three, we're using driverless pickup services. These are all new technologies. Also, we're using new biotech. And in the biotech space, what happens is people will live longer. You could take a 3D printer and create an organ from just a 3D printer. That's how advanced our technology system has allowed us to really innovate and speed up certain processes. When we look at technology, technology is what? It's cheaper, it produces things faster and better. So when people see robots in the store, that's a technology. When people go to automated processes on your phone, that's technology. That's called the algorithm. When your refrigerator, we're coming out with smart refrigerators. When those refrigerators can tell you what you need to now order or what you're low on, that's a smart technology. And so with this in mind, and I'll go back, the new economy is called innovation and technology. Innovation is the process of creating new technologies and using them in the new economy. And technology, its role is to help do things cheaper, faster, and better. So here's what we have to impress upon our community when it comes to this new economy. There are three major skills: critical thinking, entrepreneurship, and creative storytelling. This new economy now will require us to think out the box. or as my board chairman says, turn on a dime. We have to critically think processes, whereas the old system is at the collapse stage and the new system is emerging. So the critical thinking aspect is, how can I do this cheaper, better, faster? Okay. And also, how can I deliver the goods or services to the customer in a shorter window of time and still deliver a good product? When it comes to entrepreneurship now in this economy, because approximately 42% of the jobs lost won't come back. Or if they do come back, they're going to come back over a period of time that will require new skills and new training. So we're contracting right now. And as we contract, what will happen? The businesses will do what? They're going to innovate. This is their time to innovate. As they begin innovating, they will now implement new technologies. Why? Faster, cheaper, better. So what does it do to the human being? Either the human being has to be there to fix the issue, problem solve, or they're going to have to be able to work as a team to do certain things together. Okay? That's why entrepreneurship, or having the entrepreneurship spirit, is a must. If you're not some sort of an entrepreneur for the new economy, you will not be able to catapult yourself. Okay? So you have to understand structure. You have to understand systems, being an entrepreneur. You have to also understand the importance of teamwork. It used to be you could be an entrepreneur and you really didn't need a whole lot of people. That is no longer, because we're in a system where the wealth transfer is taking place. The wealth is leaving the Western countries and the Anglo-Saxon societies and transferring to the Eastern countries, or the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America. And with this wealth transfer, they will become richer. Our economy will become poorer if we don't become proactive. So let's look at the two major influences upon the US economy: fiscal policy and monetary policy. Let's talk about fiscal policy first. If you receive stimulus check, that was a result of fiscal policy. Who regulated that? The US government. That comes from Congress and the president. So fiscal policy, the people in charge of fiscal policy are our elected officials. And some examples are opportunity zones, tax credits, tax deductions, stimulus to the taxpayer, MMT, and MMT stands for modern monetary theory. That means the government is going to print money and give it to the taxpayer. And that's what you are receiving when you're receiving the stimulus. On the other side of the coin, the other influencer is monetary policy. Who's responsible for monetary policy? The Federal Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve Bank controls the circulation of money. How do they control it? Interest rates. When interest rates are going up in value, they're taking money out of the system. When interest rates go down, and we're at like zero interest rates right now, almost, that means they're pumping money into our system. So you say, Francis, they're pumping all this money into our system, and we're really not we're not getting it. You know why you're not getting it? Because you haven't mastered the fiscal policy. If you're not a business or entrepreneur, you can't take advantage of what the monetary policy does because it helps stimulate the fiscal policy. So we look at monetary policy controls interest rates. They control stimulus to the banks. We call that the repo market. They control a term called quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is when the Fed prints money and buys bonds, or quantitative tightening is when the Fed stops printing money and stops buying bonds. Okay? So let me recap what I'm saying again. We have two major influences on our US economy. The first one is a fiscal policy. Who controls that? Our elected officials. How do they control it? They create policy like the opportunity zones, tax credits, tax deductions, or stimulus to the taxpayer. If you received the stimulus check, that was because of fiscal policy. Who controls the flow of money in and out the system is the Federal Reserve. They control monetary policy. Either they're going to increase interest rates or decrease interest rates. If they increase interest rates, they're taking money out of the system. So if we get a rate hike, it means the Fed says there's too much money in the system. We now need to deflate the balloon. If it's not enough money in the system, they lower the interest rates and more money is pumped in. Also, the Fed provides stimulus to the banks. It's called the repo market. The next, they also control quantitative easing, where they buy bonds, and quantitative tightening, where they stop purchasing bonds. So these two are major in what happens around us. If you notice, the chairman, Powell, he talked about the wealth gap, the inequality. Well, here's the problem. The inequality is going to happen because values on asset classes, stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities like food, all of those are going to inflate. And they're going to inflate because of the monetary policy. Okay? So with this inflation that's going to come, you need to know how to be positioned. So let's look at the stages this morning. We have an expansion stage, a boom stage, recession, and depression. In 2008, when the market crashed and President Obama and President Bush got together, they had to pass what is called stimulus. The Federal Reserve handled that stimulus, and it was called quantitative easing. Well, remember, the market collapsed, but once the Federal Reserve got involved in the process, what happened to stocks? The stock prices went back up, okay? So we've been in an expansion and a boom since 2009 up until COVID-19, which is 2020. We've been in that boom period. Why? When you look at our job numbers and jobs hit the community, we were one of those examples, 5,000 jobs in Dallas in the southern sector, and the average wage was about $15 to $18. We were in a boom time. In February of 2020 of this year, they have now said that we're in a recession. So we're in a recession. We are about right here. We're between the recession and depression. Now, let me explain. Everybody is not going to experience the depression. People who don't have assets will experience the depression. People who have assets will stay in a recession stage. And some people won't experience, they will experience a recession, but they will experience what is called a mild recession. So for each stage, expansion, boom, recession, depression, you have stages within each stage. You have severe, mild, in categories and subcategories. So let's take the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and let's take the state of Texas. Texas has a plethora of opportunity. So it will be in a recession, but Louisiana, it doesn't have a plethora of opportunity. So right now, Louisiana is going into the first phase of a depression. Why? Because of industry. So when you start to see, you start to notice this because people start fleeing. They start migrating to places where there are opportunities. Why? Because some people will feel the effect before others. Recessions happen all the time. But if you're not able to innovate, you're going to stay in a recession longer than you will anticipate. So we're in that recession depression where some states will have mild recession while other states experience depressions. Let's look at 3 megatrends that you need to understand in this new economy. Megatrends move money. So make sure you understand that. Megatrends move money. And I'm going to give you some examples. Number 2, you got to understand economic stages. I just went over that. And number 3, you got to understand business stages. So if you work for a corporation and the company president says we're doing fine, you need to read the annual report to make sure that company is doing fine. Don't just take a person's word for it. Say, read the annual report. If they're heavily in debt, they're having a hard time paying their bills, they have to what? Downsize. They're going to have to start making cuts. It's not personal, but it's a part of this business cycle or this economic stages. So here's 2 examples of a megatrend. Baby boomers. Why? Because they're spending, they have the most money saved. And because they have the most money saved, they have the largest amount of assets in the US. I'm at the end of the baby boom. I was born in 1964. Baby boomers own homes. Baby boomers have some savings. Baby boomers have retirement. Baby boomers can travel. Baby boomers have accumulated wealth over a period of time. The next group in our generation trends will be the millennials and the Generation Zs. Why? Because baby boomers will transfer that wealth now to millennials and Gen Zs. Whereas Generation X, Generation Y, they're the ones who have been really left out. And the reason why they're left out is because when gangster rap came out and the crack, cocaine, those type of things hit our society, that was the disruptor within the Black community. Another megatrend is technological, blockchain, smartphones, robotics, artificial intelligence, and also include algorithms. Okay? Why are these important? It helps you do what you need to do faster, smarter, and cheaper. It will be cheaper for me to hire someone and use a lot of this cloud-based computing than to hire some individuals. And so if people don't transition to the new innovation cycles, what happens is your business model will be left behind, and it will be hard for you to really get back into the game. Let's look at the stages of the economy. What happens during this period of time? In expansion time, business start hiring. In a boom time, job growth, you start to see people become elevated on the job. You also begin to see increase in wages. But when the bust starts to come, the recession, you begin to see layoffs. Layoffs was our first sign. And let me be very, very clear with you. The layoffs just didn't start in February and March. In my class, Cash Flow, Collateral, and Leverage, layoffs had begun really in 2018. Del Monte closed. Ford had closed plants. This was before COVID. So this was telling us and signaling to us we were going into a recession. When we started to see closures and layoffs, we knew that we were starting to move into this recession. The depression, as layoffs continue, businesses close, but they also go bankrupt. We've had 6 major businesses. Hertz been around for 100 years, guys. All of a sudden, Hertz goes bankrupt. Sears, JCPenney, bankruptcy. So when you see icons go bankrupt, now remember, I said this to you. Everybody is not going to experience depression. Some people, everybody will experience what is called the mild recession. But you don't have to experience it if you have assets, okay? For me, this is like Katrina 2.0. Katrina 2.0 reset the whole economy in New Orleans. And then what happened was people who had assets, they were able to resettle in other places. People who didn't have assets, they were forced to go back and work in New Orleans. Okay? Let's look at the stages of business. We have several stages of business. So businesses now are in the last stage. They're in the last stage, the innovation stage. So businesses have new venture, proliferation, regulation, consolidation, and innovation, okay? Currently in COVID-19, well, let's go before that. In 2018, businesses were consolidated. They had begun to consolidate. And when they started the consolidation process, that let me know that they were going to innovate. And once they begin to innovate, then innovation would bring on a new economy. Okay? When you notice, you walked into a McDonald's and you saw a kiosk. That kiosk replaced 4 jobs. 4 jobs. Or if you walked in the bank no longer had tellers. They had a kiosk. That kiosk replaced 4 jobs. When you walk into a Sam's Club, the one on Greenville Avenue in Dallas, that replaced 8 jobs. So when the machines started coming in, and when I went to the VA, guys, I went to the VA with my husband, and there was a robot carrying like a mail, instead of a mail courier, there was a robot. He replaced 4 jobs. So when technology started coming into the system, I said, okay, we're in the innovation cycle. And since we're in the innovation cycle, we have to now reimagine how we must do business. And in reimagining how to do business, that means that we have to start teaming on some things, and we have to look at things a little bit differently. So let me go over it again. In the stages of the economy: expansion, boom, recession, depression. Now, do businesses know this? Yeah, they already know. See, the Michigan report comes out at once a year of the CFO, the chief financial officer. I read that report. If the chief financial officer said that they don't anticipate growth, that means layoffs are coming. Okay. So what happened in 2019, I think in the second quarter of 2000, I read the report. I said, uh-oh. And I told my class, I said, we're going to see some layoffs. I would tell my class all the time, I said, layoffs are going to start coming. How they're going to come, we don't know. But we're going to follow the trends and see what's happening. So when the chief financial officers of the corporation outlook was bleak, I said, okay, they see what we don't see. They're seeing either a slowdown or a recession coming. Then I said, let's look at the stages of the business cycle. It meant that the following would happen. Either they were going to consolidate or they were going to innovate. Okay, so either stage, because 2 are better than 1, they were going to consolidate. Now, let me say this. After COVID-19, we're going to see a lot of consolidation. They're innovating now. In the insurance industry, they're innovating. In the food industry, they're innovating. Everything has innovated. Everybody has an app. You don't need a claims adjuster to come out when you get in an accident. They say take a picture, upload it, and the algorithm says, X, Y, and Z. You don't need a claims adjuster anymore because of technology. So as we move into the consolidation and innovation stages, here's what you have to begin doing. I don't care if you are with a church. I don't care if you're with a nonprofit. I don't care if you're with a business. And you got to start doing some market research. Market research is essential because it's going to provide you with the analysis needed to make a prudent decision to scale and grow your business. You're going to have to understand what are some new trends coming. If the new trend is certain software, or if the new trend is a certain type of computer, market research will do that for you. When COVID-19 affected us as an organization, I went straight to market research. I sat down for 2 weeks to find out how the larger nonprofit organizations, what are they doing to retool and do their remodeling? I knew that COVID-19 affected us in a way that it's called the new normal. So the term new normal, when you hear that term, it is saying that your economy is never going to be the same. So when you hear the term, when you hear people start saying that, new normal, it means we're going to change the way we've been doing business. Now let's talk about the African American consumption spending. The African American consumption spending is approximately $1.5 trillion. We are considered a megatrend. Why? Because the American economy now is based on the consumer. You are as African Americans now, you are the cushion for the American lifestyle. Case in point, there are two examples I want to cite. First, when people got stimulus, they went to, the Nike store was what? Wrapped around the corner. The line was out of the wop. I pulled some of Nike's quarters when I looked at the annual report. And it was unbelievable how people, well, it wasn't unbelievable, but how many people from our community now, they spent the money on new Nikes. And then Anderson Cooper had a young lady on. He said, well, what are you going to do with the money? She said, well, I paid off a little debt. I paid off some debt. I got some food. But here's the thing she said to me. She said, I got a new outfit to walk around the block. And that just hit me because I realized that she's a single parent, but she needed a new outfit to walk around the block versus saying either she paid off debt or she put some in savings, okay? But because of our spending, we're 14% of this population. And because of our spending, we have the consumption spending of a country. We would be ranked 6th. We're a country, guys. So what does that mean? That means as an entrepreneur, you're going to have to tap into certain megatrends. Let me go back. Okay. See these megatrends? Be it your church, a nonprofit, whatever, you're going to have to tap into it. You're going to have to go study them. Now, there are like 6 big megatrends that's coming up. And you need to do your own due diligence. I just gave you one. I gave you one from the baby boomers. Another megatrend is millennials and Gen Zs. And so you need to study this, begin to study it and understand what these particular groups will need. You also need to understand the stages of business. So what happens a lot of times, people come to me and they say, well, I got into this business and I'm struggling. And I say, why are you struggling? I said, did you do a strategic plan? Did you do market research? No, I got into it because I liked it. That's not good enough anymore. When you get into business or when you decide that you're going to expand into something new, market research is your number one thing. If you can't substantiate it, going into this new economy, you're setting yourself up for failure. You have to know the demographic that you're going to serve first. People jump into business and they don't even know if their own demographic or their culture, that's what they want. They just jump into business. You can't do that anymore. So here's some action items I want you to take away today. Ask yourself the following. What team of professionals do I need on my team? You need you need people who have some expertise to help you get to that next level. Number two, how can I use leverage within my business model? If you don't have leverage, see, we use credit, but we don't use credit to our advantage. We use credit to survive. Now we got to start looking at what ways we could use credit to leverage. Okay? But that's another discussion. But it's something that I want you to really, really consider, because leverage is not just money. Leverage is people, systems, and other people's resources. I had a client recently. She and I was discussing, and she said, "How am I going?" I said, "We're going to leverage now your relationships." She said, "Oh, Miss Francis, it was there all the while." So after we went through her leverage exercise, she realized, oh my God, I was stressing out. But what did she do? She hired a professional to help her through the process of growing and scaling her business. The last one, I want you to list anything that could disrupt or impact your business model and create a risk management plan. Okay? I want you to list anything. Okay, so let me take the San Wesley Home Center. So what began to happen when I was teaching cash flow, collateral, and leverage, I told the class in September, I said, guys, we're having a supply chain issue. You need to now begin to, buy toiletries, water, food, start stacking, and I want you to know you're gonna have to have a backup plan just in case layoffs happen or you're not going to be able to work. So the class started, they started working on their plans. I didn't call it a risk management plan because I didn't want to freak people out, but that's what it is. So we started working on the risk management plan. So I started working on the risk management plan for the center. I had to say, okay, what happens if we can't come back to the center? What happens if there's so many layoffs that, those people come to the center? I just started working on something new. Then I did the market research, and the market research showed that over, I think 30% of the people would not be able to go back to employment. So in the research data, it showed that. So after that research data, I said, we're going to have to focus on entrepreneurship, because I didn't want anybody to have false hopes. Everybody knows I'm the real deal. I'm going to tell you if it's going to work. I'm going to tell you if it's not going to work. If you don't want to hear it's not going to work, you can't come to me. But I realized at that point, we were going to get hit in such a way. How do now I retool and help people do what? Get back into the workforce. That meant you now have to become an entrepreneur. Okay? And in becoming an entrepreneur, we started, Jasmine got the funding, she was able to reach out to all of the CDFIs and Frost Bank. We had them to come in. We did a boot camp. Then we reached out to the city of Dallas to come in to deal with contracting. So we had started retooling our model on the workforce side to now kind of shift to the entrepreneurship side. And then when COVID-19 came in, we stepped in again. I happened to be included in a meeting with a U.S. senator who was on the Entrepreneurship and Small Business Committee. He asked me to come in because he wanted me to have a perspective, you know, for the Black community. So in listening, you know, we were talking about, you know, big business gets money easily. What about the small guy? What about the gig economy worker? You know, what about the independent contractor? So as a result of being on that front end, we were able to what? Turn on a dime, as my chairman says all the time, and be able to service now, give technical assistance with the help of the United Way grant that we received. We gave technical assistance to 46 businesses. We helped many, about 21 of those businesses have thus far received $600,000 in PPP or EIDL. We helped to move them very quickly and fast into the portal. So when everybody else was saying that they were having trouble, our folks had gotten in. Why? Because we knew that they were going to need help navigating and maneuvering through that whole system. They were asking for a lot of documents. We would help coach them. And I'm telling you, it helped save 68 jobs. So here, market research, if I hadn't read it, if I didn't know that the economy was going to shift like it was going to shift, we wouldn't have been ready to service someone else based on another need that we fulfill, because we could sort of foresee or think ahead, forward think that we're going to have to help our people, but we're going to have to help them in different ways. So let me recap. I'm going to go recap because I know many of you just came in, and I want to thank you for being here. So let's look at, there are 4 components to the economic system. We have the institution, we have ideology, we have industrialization, and we have integration. All right? These are the drivers. But those are the components, but the drivers are politics, history, culture, and technology. So these particular areas drive money in. Here's what I'm saying. Currently, Black Lives Matter is politics and it's culture and it's history and technology are all being used at the same time with Black Lives Matter. Okay? So they're driving the what? They're driving the discussion into institutions. If you notice, PayPal, they're giving money. Lowe's, they're giving money to Black businesses. See, they're driving the discussion. I got 2 calls last week to tell me that these corporations were going to set aside money for Black businesses, be on the lookout, got the emails about it, and boom. I reached out to a lot of my low voltage guys. I said, okay, I text them, I say, apply. Because this opportunity is not going to be there forever. We put it on our Facebook page. Because these institutions, what's driving it? Politics, history, culture, and technology. When Drew Brees said what he said, what happened? Technology forced him to give what? An apology the next day. Because the Twitter sphere and Facebook just went crazy. Okay? So I want you to understand, these are the drivers, but these are the components. And so what happens is the drivers help change the institution and ideology and integration and industrialization. Those are the things you really need to understand. If you don't have a catalyst, nothing changes. With the catalyst, you can affect change. What's the new economy called? Innovation and technology. What is innovation? It's the process of using new technologies for the new economy. What's technology? Is making things, producing things cheaper, faster, and better. What are the three critical things you need for this new economy? Critical thinking, problem solving, entrepreneurship, creative storytelling. But entrepreneurship is our major focus for today because I want you to take away this. Entrepreneurship is an asset. You know, we teach all the asset classes. We teach paper, hard, business, and digital. We teach the asset classes in our cash flow, collateral, and leverage. And by teaching those asset classes, entrepreneurship is what we teach in our low voltage. Why? Because we tell the guys, you may start with a job, but you can build a business. What are the two influences on our economy? Fiscal policy and monetary policy. Who controls fiscal? The US government. Who controls monetary? The Federal Reserve. Both work hand in hand. What are examples? The opportunity zones, tax credit, tax deduction, stimulus to the taxpayer. On the monetary side, interest rates, they control if interest rates go up or if they go down. They provide stimulus to the banks, quantitative easing, and quantitative tightening. These two are major because the concern now is the wealth gap. Monetary policy is driving inequality. And here's why. We don't own anything. We don't own assets. So you can't participate in the asset acceleration, okay? So if you don't own any assets, with monetary policy printing, you're not going to participate. It's going to hurt you more than it harms you. Because if you put money in the bank, how much interest will the bank give you? You understand? So that's why I teach my class. I said, y'all have to learn to trade options. Because if the bank is not going to give it, you got to find it in another market. I said, if you make $100 a month, you made more than what the bank has given you. Or you got to have a stock that provides you with dividends. But you have to participate and build assets. We talked about the stages of the economy: expansion, boom, recession, depression. I said to you, everyone does not participate in the depression. The depression doesn't happen for everyone. My two examples was Texas and Louisiana. Texas, it might, have a mild recession, but Louisiana has somewhat of a depression because why? No industry is there. Their major driver is the city of New Orleans. The city of New Orleans' major industry is tourism. See what I'm saying? So understanding just micro and macro things will help you. Three things you got to understand: mega trends, economic stages, and business stages. I gave the example of the baby boomers and technological mega trends. In the stages of the economy, expansion, boom, and recession, I said these are signs that you can see: business hiring, job growth, increased wages. Stages in the recession, you're going to see massive layoffs, but in a depression, we know layoffs and businesses will continue to close. Business stages: new venture, proliferation, regulation, consolidation, and innovation. Let me give you an example of the business stages. Let's take Apple. When Apple first came out with the smartphone, the iPad, and Apple is going to be our example. That was our first time having a smartphone, okay? That was the new venture. Proliferation now is the wild, wild west. all your competitors start to come in and try to compete with Apple, with the brand. Okay, so Samsung came in, Ericsson came in, Nokia came in. All these cell phone makers started coming in, trying to create other cell phone, Androids. You see what I'm saying? So that's proliferation. It's when the field begins to get crowded. Regulation, the government steps in. They create a rule. And what happens is when the government steps in, they separate the wheat from the tare. The strongest companies survive. The weaker companies, one or two things happen. Look at T-Mobile. They did a merger with Sprint. See? So so when regulation starts to come in, you know consolidation is right around the corner. And then what happens is these companies now bringing a whole new innovation model in order for innovation to now make their businesses leaner, better, and cheaper on their operation side. So you'll understand an example of how this works. I said to you also, market research is very crucial. It's very important. You can't go by what you feel. You have to have some data that is going to help you navigate through these markets and times. I said, look at the African American consumption spending. If consumption spending wasn't important, then we wouldn't report the numbers. They ask every month, what is the consumer thinking? Here's what they do. They look at our spending pattern. When African Americans went back to work, when you were hearing about the high rates of employment, they also were increasing their spending. And so as they were becoming employed, they were spending more also. So when you saw a booming economy in like 2018, 2000, it was because African Americans had been put into the whole economic game they got jobs, and their jobs were between 15 and 18 an hour. So African American consumption spending is a mega trend. I ask you to think about some things. Ask yourself, what team of professionals do I need on my team? You have to use leverage. And I ask you to begin to list what could disrupt or impact your business model and create a risk management plan. So now I'm going to open it up for questions. I want to thank everybody for being on this call. I really and truly appreciate you. Also, if you need to contact me, my email address is francis.smith@ZWHJCOC.org. Our website is www.ZWHJCOC.org. And if you just want to send us a nice donation for this presentation and for us hosting this week, you could do text to give at 817-406-1206. Because what you have to remember is this: we need each other. And as we're on the front line trying to educate you and help you, we need you too. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Audrey or Jasmine, any questions? Put your questions in the chat so I can answer them. Stay on mute though, but put your questions in the chat. Any questions, Audrey?
I'm checking.
Okay.
Dorothy has a question.
Okay.
How do you do market research according to your interest?
Okay, so the Small Business Development um, group, we're going to have a presenter. Her name is Judith Collins. She will present tomorrow on market research. It is best for you to really go to the Small Business Development Center because they can help provide you and walk you through market research for your particular industry. So that's a good question. And we're going to have Judith Collins on tomorrow when she's going to talk about market research. Any other questions? Thank you, Dorothy.
That also, Budio, I believe they had a question about how to start the research. Tune in tomorrow for Judith Collins from 10 to 11:30.
Correct.
Linda has a question. How do you suggest businesses develop a strategic plan?
Okay,
Is there
so
a specific format?
wait, say that again.
Is there a specific format for the strategic plan?
There are some templates out there. And what I try to tell businesses is this. Let's keep it simple. What are some of your strengths and what are your weaknesses? What are going to be your needs? So 4 categories: strengths, weaknesses, needs, and talents. If you define it based on those 4 objectives, you can now have a baseline on how you can start. So your strengths. So let's look at the organization's strengths. And let me just take our organization. Our strength was that we had a relationship with the community. The community had a love for this, Pastor Holmes because of his fight for justice. Okay, so we had a unique relationship. Now, here's the other thing. Everybody thought that we should fight their fight or fight their battle, and we couldn't do that because we just didn't have that type of model where we could take on everything. So when we looked at we assessed our talents, and then we assessed our weaknesses. So in the beginning, we knew our weaknesses had to relate to how do we do the same thing everybody else is doing, or do we do something different? So when we first looked at the strategic plan, we were sort of doing what other people were doing. And then I had to go back and retool the plan. And remember, plans can be changed. If you feel that the plan is not working, it's okay. We went down that pathway. We went down that road. So we had to go down the road, and we had to do what? We had to reassess and reorganize. So I had to reassess. I had to do what I knew I could do best, what my talents were giving me. I knew training was going to be one of those talents. And so that's how we developed the Lunch and Learn series. Because we knew that we were in the community, we had a message to bring. We knew we had tools to help people get out of poverty. But should we do it the same way everybody else was doing it? No, we had to separate. And we had to do things that everybody else wasn't doing. Okay. Thank you for that question.
Next question is Nidra Epps.
Okay. Ms. Nidra.
She says she knows that you're talking a lot about entrepreneurship today as a focus, but can you share a little more about the role of creative storytelling?
Oh, great. Okay, so here's the problem. We have a great model, but we're not doing a lot of storytelling, Nidra. So a lot of people don't really know. When people come to the center, and they see like 200 people in the lobby lining up to go in the back to get a job with Amazon, folks are like, oh my God, this is happening here. People are amazed. We just do the work. We haven't really put ourselves out there in a form of storytelling. We tell the story when we go to community events, okay? I was invited to one of the elementary schools in the community, and I'm gonna tell you, I told the parents, I said what was available, and they needed to hear that. So I don't do, that's not my forte. My forte is let's get the work done. But storytelling, that's one of the weaknesses, I would say, because we just don't toot our horn. We don't get out there and brag on ourselves. So people like yourself, because I know your business, you could be an asset to help businesses and models tell their story and get their story more into the community. People walked into FRAZIER and they said, I heard about you, but man, I didn't realize you guys do all this. You see what I'm saying? So they may have heard about one little snippet of things that we've done, but they didn't know to the degree or the magnitude that we do it. Okay. Thank you, though. Thank you for that question.
Deborah Young had a comment. So I didn't see a question. We are both creatives. I am a storyteller. As an entrepreneur, I am a screenwriter and emerging filmmaker. And she says we need to think about Netflix, Amazon, Disney, Hulu, things like that.
Correct.
Going to the creative storytelling.
Correct.
Next question would be from Lewis. This is a loaded question.
Okay, of course.
This will be the last question. Mr. Jennings, can politics, technology, and culture complete the coming together of ideology and integration throughout history, powering it?
Yes, it can. And here's how. And it is. As a result of the protests, policy is being changed today as a result of the protests. Now, at what level is it being changed? The local level. Remember, politics is local. If you feel you need certain things changed, you have to put that in place at the local level. And that's what's going on. Then it goes from the local level and it mushrooms up to the state level, then it mushrooms up to the federal level. But yes, it does make a difference. Culture, history, all of that is creating new policy, from the chokehold to excessive force. If you hear now they're talking about defunding the police, it's not really a defunding of public safety, it's what is called reallocation of goods and products for public safety. So it's not that you need the police, but what has to happen is resources have to be deployed differently. And then communities are going to have to say, and organizations, nonprofit, churches, everything, they're going to have to come together. They're going to say, how are we going to become a pillar within our community? I applaud St. Luke. And I was, sharing with Audrey this morning. I applaud St. Luke because they didn't leave the community. They stayed within the community as a church. They could have left the community long ago and build somewhere else, but they didn't do that. They stayed there and they maintained relationships. Now, I'm not faulting churches for moving out to bigger buildings in other places. I'm just saying, as a action of social justice, they maintain their connection and their ties. And then when we came along as the children of St. Luke, then, we help that social justice model just take on another leg. So, does it make a difference protesting? Yes, it does. How? It changed policy at the local level. Thank you. So, Audrey?
We have another question. I don't want to butcher the name. First name is Yareli.
Okay.
And the question is this a good time to start a business?
This is one of the best times to start a business. Here's why. You have something unique and creative. But what I'm going to tell you is this. Before you start, if you're listening tomorrow on to Judith with market research, and then we have Alfred with taxes, and then we have Marquita with entity structure, make sure you take these tools, because you now need to ask yourself some questions about the type of business you want to start and how do you want it to begin. Do you want a full scale? Do you want to do it as a seasonal business? Do you want to just do it as a hobby? Okay. So I want to engage everybody to start a hobby or a seasonal business so that you can now grow and connect with others to create a full scale business. But you got to start. So it's a great time. A lot of opportunities are going to be given to small businesses. When I looked at the next cycle of funding for nonprofits, there are two major areas: social justice and entrepreneurship. Two major areas. So even think about a social enterprise model where, and a social enterprise is a nonprofit. You have a nonprofit heart, but it's a for-profit model. So social enterprises are great, even if you didn't want to do just a for-profit model. Next question.
Ms. Seaton is asking, will a recording be available later for this series? And the answer will be yes.
Okay.
Let's see. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Next question is, marketing strategies is also a great method of storytelling. Our companies need to tell their stories in various platforms. Okay. Creating provocation visit, mission statements, product. Okay, so that was pretty much following up with the creative storytelling.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that would be the last question. I don't have any more questions.
Okay, so let me give you what we call a good closing. Everybody on this call today, how many people we have?
45.
Okay, everybody on this call today, I want to thank you. I appreciate you. On behalf of the board and our staff, we appreciate you. But we want to say to you, you are game changers. You make a difference. And with your knowledge, with your expertise, and with us being community, we can make a better life for many people out there who don't have a clue on what to do. We just need you to help pull them in. And if you take the time today to think about those who have talents and some skill, we could make a big difference within our community. So I want to thank you all for being on this presentation today. We have our next presentation that starts at 1 o'clock. So thank you, and we appreciate everything that you've done for the Zan Wesley Holmes Jr. Community Outreach Center. Thank you, and have a blessed day.